Welcome. I'm Marusia Chavchavadze, Executive Director of American Friends of Georgia, a charitable organization. Thank you for watching AFG's first virtual presentation of a Georgian filmmaker. We plan to do more of this in the future. Be sure to get on our mailing list on our website, afgeorgia.org. The mission of American Friends of Georgia is to provide educational, cultural, and humanitarian assistance to the people of the country of Georgia, particularly vulnerable populations. The Nikozi Art School and International Animation Film Festival are both projects supported by AFG. AFG, in collaboration with the Embassy of Japan in Georgia, built the art school in 2010. We are very proud of that accomplishment. We hope you will consider supporting our mission and sponsorship of Bishop Isaiah's work in Nikozi. And now I'm happy to introduce to you the young Georgian filmmaker, Nino Benashvili, who is being interviewed by our longtime supporter, Anna Lejava, who is currently a graduate student at Georgetown University. Welcome, Anna and Nino.
First of all, Nina, thanks so much for being here, and thank you for creating this film. It was absolutely beautiful. I enjoyed watching it, and it just brought so many emotions. I guess before we start asking you questions about the film, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself, where do you go to school, where you live right now? That would be really good to hear for the audience.
Well, so after I finished The Children of Nikozi, I started a graduate film program at Tisch, NYU Tisch. And currently I'm mostly live in New York, but I always make sure to come back to Georgia, and a lot of my future films are planned in Georgia. So I expect to be between New York and Georgia for many years to come.
That's wonderful. Now, if you could tell us, why did you choose to film this story? And how did you choose to film it? Because it's definitely a heavy subject. I want to hear what was your thought process during all this.
Well, my connection with Nikozi did not start in 2019 when I went to film the festival. My family always went there to the monastery, and one of the first things I filmed, photos I took on my first camera was right after the war, right after the active military left the territory of Nikozi. So it always really, stuff like that stays with you forever, seeing how it was completely bombed to the ground. And, and so I had that experience before, and I always came back to that story, whether it would be with like play. I wrote a play when I was doing my undergrad, which was actually for liberal arts. I didn't do directing as an undergrad. And I wrote short stories. So that story of 2008 war always stayed with me. In particular, the filming of this documentary was more spontaneous, actually. I had just, I shouldn't say I had been graduated for a few years, and I decided that it was time to pursue what I always wanted to do, which was to direct films. And so I basically got a DSLR camera and came to Georgia. And that was around the time when the festival is happening. So I went there essentially as a videographer to get interviews from the guests and so on and so forth. So the story really came together while I was filming it and started, shaping. I didn't really have much pre-production for it. It was just me and my friend Georgi Korize, who did sound for the film. So it was just the two of us in the team, and then my friend Nina Benashvili helped just as an assistant for a couple of days. But yes, it just, started, and then in the editing room, it wrote itself. I mean, it's an incredible place. It's not hard to find a story there. So
that's interesting. Yeah. So let's go to that editing side. We noticed in the film that a lot of focus is on positivity. Was that a conscious choice? For example, there are movable fences as a result of the borderization by Russia, but you didn't put that part in the movie. You focused on how art can transform children, how making art on children can be so transformative. Can you speak a little bit about that, the choices that you made?
Sure, that's a really important question, because honestly, I think I went there angrier and left happier in a way. I did not, as a documentarian, like, of course, you always put your subjectivity as a director. You can't be a fly on the wall, because you're editing this interview will be edited, right? So like anything can be shaped, but it just, the way the people of Nikozi spoke and the way Metropolitan Isaiah spoke and all the guests, it just naturally gravitated that way, And then I was thinking, like, especially with, terrible things are happening now, with Ukraine and everything. And I'm in no way this kind of like everything is good. And we have interviews there where people are talking about war and their experiences. So it's not like we have forgotten about it. It's just that was a place of positivity. That's just like this small island where, somehow it was immune to that, even though it was in the middle of it, And so it would have been very dishonest from me to try to shape it in any other way than it was naturally coming together. And besides, like, there are so many TV reports you can see about that part, I just didn't think that I needed to force that into the documentary that I was making. I hope that answered the question, because that is a very important question. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that's such a good point to really identify Nikozi Children's Center as this island of positivity in the midst of crisis. And I'm sure in this crisis, in the conflict zone, you felt the tension. So could you speak a little about that tension living right next to this positivity and how you translate that into film?
There was this like juxtaposition of people who again, I'm going to repeat myself on that, who had experienced it, and people who just knew of it, So somehow, yes, of course, the tension exists, and I will never forget going to the border, and I wasn't supposed to go there, and filming there. And there was this like one point where, I'm not going to name whoever took me, but they didn't expect, I think, me taking out the cameras and everything. And they were sort of like timing when Russians weren't patrolling the area. So at that time I had this like very long hair, and I was carrying the camera, and they yelled, we gotta run, because, the soldiers will be coming around soon. So I got my hair stuck in the camera. So I was like running towards the car that way. And so, yes, I have personally experienced that tension that's never gone away. But so I'm trying to like come back around to your question. Somehow the children that I've had, that I interviewed, they must have been very little during the time. Like, I think that's also somehow it seemed to me that there was a great difference between them and like older generation. Somehow this, I don't want to, like, it sounds so miraculous that like an art school would shield children from this kind of like conflict zone, but they seemed very I forget the word lari, how to say in English.
I mean, I don't think there's a direct translation, but you could say
but it's like something else than happy. Yeah. Not nonchalant. No. It's like it seems like they had not lost their childhood. That's where I was trying to get to. And that was fascinating to me. And I saw the importance of
art.
The art in that there are children who have not lost their childhood in that village, where if you go to other places around the border, it's not the, you know,
same story.
It's a very different story. So yeah.
So now let's turn a little bit to you and your story. So we know that you're multi-talented, you write music, and the music that you wrote for this film is absolutely gorgeous and it's included in the film. So what made you switch from all kinds of different arts to filming?
Well, to start, I mean, I just always wanted to be a film director. It's funny you point out the music, because that was just because that was the first time I wrote something, like a melody came to me, and I didn't have, so I mean, this film didn't have any budget, so I didn't have anyone to write music, so I just had to do a lot of things myself, and that's how you learn, you know. And that was an incredible experience, but my primarily that's like directing is what I want to do. And I just believe that film is a team effort. Like, that's, you hear that so much. I mean, I'm not saying anything new, but knowing what each part does is very important. So yeah. But I don't call myself a composer. That was just a fluke. That was a song maybe that I had to sing for many years, and it just came out in this film.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
So it's been absolutely amazing, you know, talking to you, also seeing this film. I wonder if you have, you know, last takeaway or something that audience would you want audience to see in this film, or if you have a message of hope or anything that you want to end this interview.
Oh, that I will say no. I don't want to. I'm already directing the audience by having directed a film. I don't want to put in any more like messages to take away from it, if that makes sense.
Was there anything in the film that you didn't consciously put into it and you would want to put into it, but you just did not include for whatever reason?
Oh, I mean, there are things I wish I would have shot, and that's always the case. But as I mentioned initially, that I went there primarily to interview the guests and so on. I was like the only camera person. Unfortunately, I didn't have time to just observe a lot more, you know, outside of talking heads and so on. So, I mean, definitely next documentary I will do is not going to be so interview heavy. I think that's like sort of one thing that I don't regret it. It was just like, that's the circumstances I was in, but it's just good thing to know for the future, because, you know, that was the first time I did a film. So yeah. But, and did you want to know anything? You said something about future or?
Yes, we would love to hear about your future projects or plans that you may have.
Oh, okay, yes. So I'm doing narrative films, and I'm currently in Georgia planning my second year film, which I want to shoot in Georgia. It will be a narrative film, but I don't like to talk ahead of time about stuff like that. And yes, in the future, it just really depends on the story. I loved doing a documentary. I love doing narrative. So it's just depends, where life takes me.
So you have been there, at the Nikozi Children's Center. You have seen it with your own eyes, their needs, and just definitely like lots of things that these children need. So what would you say to the AFG supporters in the United States and elsewhere? How can they support these children and their education?
So I remember the first stories when the art school was starting, and they basically didn't even have a roof, I think. And it was just incredible for me to go back after about 11 years. It would have been 2011 festival I went to, and to see how much has changed and how much was built, and just having free animation studio and stuff like that for children that I haven't even seen in the United States. And so I think I'm really honored and glad that I have, as a human being, an opportunity with my film to possibly support Nikozi and what AFG does for Nikozi and has been doing for years. Yes, so from my end, I want to say thank you for that.
Nino, thank you so much for directing this film with barely no budget, for being here talking to us. I enjoyed the film. I'm sure our audiences will enjoy the film. And it's just so important to really highlight what AFG does in Georgia and to highlight the children who are benefiting from this art project in Nikozi. Yeah, and wish you good luck. And we will be watching out for your new projects and looking forward to watching them.
Thank you.